Eric Schmitt. Senator Schmitt, thank you for joining us this morning. We just saw James Longman talking about Travis Timmerman, a resident of your state. Have you had any contact with him or his family?
I haven't. It's positive news, of course, and we're happy to see that revelation. And of course, there's a lot more that's going to unfold there. But I think President Trump's been clear as far as us intervening there. I don't think that's a situation that we should do. But I do think diplomacy will be important, especially in these critical hours in the aftermath of Assad, being overthrown.
The president has said we're not going to intervene. President-elect has said we're not going to intervene there. He says the United States should have nothing to do with it. But we are there right now. There are U.S. troops in Syria conducting counterterrorism operations against ISIS. Do you think those troops should remain?
Well, I think that's a longer discussion, and a discussion that President Trump had in his first term. I do think we're entering a new phase, though, of realism in this country. President Trump would be less interventionist, and we get back to our core national interests, principally defending the homeland, the Indo-Pacific, and China. And so I think that's a longer-term conversation. We'll make sure everybody's safe over there. That's the first order of business. But again, I think people have had enough of these forever wars all across the world. We can't be everywhere all at once all the time. That's just not our capability. So I think that I'm welcoming President Trump come in with this agenda.
Even if that means ISIS gaining a foothold in Syria?
Well, I think, understanding what terrorism means around the world is important, but having these tripwires in other regions that pull us into wars, I think the American people have had enough of that. And I think President Trump was pretty clear about it, not only his first term, but when he campaigned. And so, again, I think getting back to this sense of, abandoning this failed foreign policy that's cost us trillions of dollars, that sent our men and women across the world, I think we need to revisit that and, again, get back to our core national interests. I mean, we have drones flying above New Jersey. We don't know what they are. China has a bigger Navy than we have, not a better Navy, but a bigger Navy than we have right now. So getting back to our core national interests, I think, is a hallmark of this new realism that President Trump is ushering in.
President's nominee for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has a history with Bashar al-Assad and his regime. She met with Assad. She has said supportive things about him, said he wasn't an enemy of the United States, also questioned whether he used chemical weapons. Does that give you any concerns as she faces confirmation for Director of National Intelligence?
I know Tulsi Gabbard. She's a patriot. She served our country honorably. She, I think, fits the reform agenda. President Trump ran on disrupting permanent Washington and having people who are going to view things differently. The intelligence agencies in this country were part of the Hunter Biden laptop, suppressing that story. There's a lot of reform, George, that needs to happen in those agencies. Tulsi Gabbard is somebody who I think can execute on that. And she also is somebody that believes in our Constitution, individual liberties. And I think this smearing her as some sort of foreign asset is a slur against her. And I look forward to her opportunity to answer these questions in these Senate confirmation hearings.
So you do have questions about her relationship with the Assad regime, or no?
No, not at all. I don't think so. I mean, I don't think it's unusual for members of Congress to visit foreign countries and talk to foreign leaders. In fact, what Joe Biden has done is not talk to anybody and not be respected. President Trump, I think, believes in engaging in diplomacy, solving these things. He wants to bring peace to Ukraine. I think that's something the American people support.
How about the president's nominee for FBI Director Kash Patel? He put out a book called Government Gangsters that included a 60-person enemies list. And the Wall Street Journal this week wrote this, in December 1st, wrote this about it. They said the main concern is Mr. Patel's stated desire to use power in a second Trump term to seek revenge against Mr. Trump's opponents. Voters didn't re-elect Mr. Trump to practice lawfare the way his opponents have. The country wants a bureau it can trust, not a Republican version of the Comey FBI. How do you respond to the Wall Street Journal?
Well, first of all, the idea that he came up with an enemies list is false. There's a footnote in his book related to corrupt actors. And I do think Kash Patel is the right man for the job. This guy served as chief of staff at the Department of Defense. He was deputy at DNI. He was a prosecutor. He was a public defender. And let's review the tape here. The FBI was involved in spying on President Trump in 2016. The FBI was involved in the Hunter Biden laptop cover-up. They pre-bunked that story with big tech. The FBI has investigated Catholics because they attend traditional Latin Mass. And the FBI has investigated parents who show up to school board meetings because under the auspices of the Patriot Act. That agency is in desperate need of reform. Kash Patel is very qualified, and I think he's going to get the support in the Senate.
Finally, I want to ask you about President-elect Trump's decision to pardon those involved in the January 6th riots. You spoke out about January 6th. You said violence cannot be tolerated. Are you confident that President-elect Trump will not pardon those who actually engaged and were convicted of violent acts?
I think President Trump, what he said is he's going to look at these cases on an individual basis. And as a former prosecutor, a former attorney general, that's the exact right approach. And I think you do separate violent acts from nonviolent acts, but I think he's been pretty clear he's going to view these individually. And I think that media's obsession with January 6th and the Democrats' obsession with January 6th is because they sort of built this foundation on why President Trump should never get back in office. It started there, then the J6 committee, then the lawfare that ensued. The American people rejected all that. They don't want to be a banana republic. President Trump stared all of that down, George, and he won. He got a mandate, swept the battleground states, won the popular vote, and he's coming in on an agenda of reform.
Senator Schmitt, thanks for your time this morning.